Let's hear a little from C.J. Stroud, the Texans' second-year quarterback, when asked what's the difference in your performance between last year and this year.
You tell me, I think, I'll try to approach the game the same way I did, and even, I think I'm seeing it better than I ever have, just a little banged up, so I'm not really making plays, and that's a terrible excuse, but, really just not making plays. That's really the difference between last year and this year for me is just not making enough plays. So
the fans are booing from the home crowd. How does that affect y'all as a team, or does it affect you?
People are entitled to their opinions, and they care about the game, and their emotions matter. So I understand. It's not my first time, and probably won't be my last. So it's not something to internalize and point the finger at yourself. But it is something that you can, use it to motivate you to not want those moments anymore. So, I got plenty of football left in my career, hopefully, God willing. And I know this is going to be a story I'll tell one day that helped me in the long run.
Only the 8th time since the merger that a team scored a total of 2 points in a game. And 31-2 was not a scoregami. It happened October 11, 1936, Boston at Green Bay. 31-2 was the final score of that game. So that just was an embarrassment. I almost feel like 2 points is more embarrassing than a shutout.
Yeah, seriously.
Because
right.
It's like your defense is saying,
yeah,
hey,
we outscored
assholes.
You. Right.
We can score more points than you can. Sorry, Archie. We shouldn't be talking like that on it's Boxing Day in Great Britain. We should have a little more reverence for their extended Christmas holiday.
Yeah.
So regardless, it just, what happened last year was we went into the season with the Texans in that small handful of teams that have no chance.
Right.
Because they'd been through several years of dysfunction, the Deshaun Watson stuff, Jack Easterby trying to take the team over. Apparently, I don't know that he actually was, but it was just this guy, this meteoric rise who's got great influence over Cal McNair, and everything seemed sideways and out of whack. And then they quietly, with all but one of their games at 1 o'clock Eastern, win the games that, they have a chance to win, lose the games they're supposed to lose, and next thing you know, they're 10-7 and they're winning the division, and then they just, obliterated the Browns in the playoffs. That created a higher bar. That put them in the elite, the upper echelons, as some would say, of the AFC, and they haven't delivered. They're no better than they were last year. They're possibly worse than they were last year. You can make the argument they're roughly the same. They've had a much tougher schedule this year.
That's part
you
of it.
Want to know why you're not making plays?
Right.
Look at your schedule. Look at who you played this year. The Bills, although they beat the Bills. The Lions, the Chiefs. I remember going into the season saying, look at all these games that the Texans have to play. Yeah, they're in a soft division, but the out-of-division schedule is the exact opposite. And it shows when they come up against a good team. They still haven't had a signature road win, and now they're getting beat soundly at home by playoff team.
Yeah, no, they're showing that they're hanging on by a thread right now. Basically, it is falling apart in front of us, and a lot of people want to blame C.J. Stroud, and I don't agree with those sentiments. I don't. Hey, the defense is good, we know that, but man, they still, like we saw yesterday, we've seen good offenses move the ball on them and have no problem. When we saw that on Saturday with the Chiefs too, and the offensively. Listen, you saw those plays there. C.J. Stroud definitely missed some throws that we're not accustomed to seeing him miss. There's no question about that. But also, it's him having to kind of do it all the time. Their run game is really like they run against the horrible defenses in football. They never really run against the good defenses of football. Who is there? Nico Collins is still not 100% in my opinion when I watch him. And then after that, nobody really cares about anybody of the receivers as far as being a threat that they're like, oh, wow, we got to game plan him. We got to double team him and do all that. Let alone, as we've talked about, the pass protection issues with the football team. The league has caught up to Bobby Slowick and what he does on the offensive side of the ball. Physically, they can't block up front. Schematically, it's messed up and doesn't work the right way. They have not put C.J. Stroud in a position, in my opinion, to really succeed. They put him in a position this year a little too much of like, hey, carry us because nobody's open and the protection's not that good. So make a nice move and put the ball right on the money. Now, yesterday, he was off, certainly. He missed some throws, and we're not used to seeing that. But I think that's all a a snowball effect of having to look over your shoulder all year long, people not being open, nothing being there. And, yeah, yesterday was just an off day. And then, of course, they got behind, and I felt like he pressed, and he was like, I got to start making some plays here. And they don't have the weaponry to keep up with the Baltimore Ravens.
Well, an offensive line for most quarterbacks is critical. Only a small handful can perform at a high level without competent blocking. And that's been the big difference this year for the Texans.
That's it.
As it relates to the running game and the passing game, the offensive line isn't there. And Bobby Slowick hasn't adjusted the offense to deal with the fact that the offensive line isn't holding up like it did last year. And, Slowick goes from almost Ben Johnson category of one more year and then your ship is going to come in. I don't expect him to get serious consideration. He may not even get an interview.
They're going to have to reevaluate his job as the offensive coordinator of the Houston Texans and go, wait, we if you're going to stay here, we got to change some things. This is not going to work. Like Shanahan's first 3 weeks of his playbooks has to expand. There has to be more to the offense. Our quarterback has to be more in charge of protection and how that plan goes about. That's another issue down there, is it's very basic with the protection scheme, and they let the center do it. And the quarterback, therefore, is just trusting the center. So he drops back and he's going, hey, nobody told me there's an issue here. And then the center doesn't make the right call, and the quarterback's like, oh, I got crushed? Well, yeah, and that's odd. Again, the top teams in football. You look at any of the top offenses, the quarterback is very much a part of, hey, Mike 52. Hey, check. No, we're going to switch it. Ringo, Mike 54. Everybody's on the same page, and he knows. So there's a lot of things here that they got to go back to school with and go back to the drawing board and figure out a little bit to help C.J. Stroud, get the offense on the same page. And then, of course, injuries and things have hurt them as well. Let's not forget about that. But, yeah, for all the people out there blaming C.J. Stroud, and I know he made a lot of noise in the offseason, and he shouldn't have. We know that. It feels like people are wanting to pile on him now because of those moments with Caleb Williams and ranking quarterbacks and do all that. And I'm sitting here trying to tell you, and like you are too, there's issues with the team and the support around him right now.
C.J. Stroud's the one who got booed yesterday, though. Yeah. That's a rarity. Yeah. And I feel like, last year it felt so out of whack. C.J. Stroud, dramatically better than Bryce Young. This year, Chris, even though the Panthers have not been consistently winning, the performance of Bryce Young relative to C.J. Stroud, the gap has closed. And now we'll see in year 3 what kind of improvements the Panthers can make and what kind of changes the Texans will make. And there's a certain element of intoxication that can arise as it relates to your deeper franchise issues if you're making the playoffs, because that's always the litmus test for saving a coach's job, did you make the playoffs or not. So, hey, you're in the AFC South. Okay. Making the playoffs is a given right now. The question is, what are you going to do after that? Making the playoffs because you win the division, not because you're a wild card, although the Colts still have a chance. But what do you do after that? Is this team built to do anything more than go one and out? I saw some chatter last night of people saying that D'Amico Ryans should have his job reevaluated, which is kind of ludicrous when you think about it. I know. But somebody's responsible for this. That's the thing. At the end of the day, and this is what happens. When your bar's really low and you go 10-7, you're coach of the year. When your bar's really high and you go 10-7, you're on the hot seat going into the next year.
I know.
Potentially.
And that's where we got to talk sense into people and go, hey, before 2 years ago, if people said, hey, in year 2 in D'Amico Ryans, you're going to win the AFC South and still get in the playoffs, we'd have gone, well, damn, he must have done a pretty good job first 2 years. So we got to talk some sense in some of these idiots who are saying that crap, because that's stupid. I mean, it's not been perfect, and they got to reevaluate. And you're right. Somebody's got to answer to some of this. There's no doubt. But still, it's going to be the second year in a row winning the AFC South, second year in a row winning a home playoff game. Yes, C.J. Stroud regressed a lot, but there's been a lot of issues there, certainly. And, hey, again, that game yesterday, 10 rushes, 86 yards, and a touchdown in the first quarter. I could tell you, when I watched the first drive, I went, oh, shit, Texans are in trouble. I mean, there was a few holes there where I was like, I could have ran through there sideways and still got 5 yards. I mean, damn. So there's issues throughout right there. They're not playing great, but I don't think we're at, D'Amico Ryan's fire stage or any of that yet. I know.
I'm just saying it's out there.
It's out there.
And,
right.
And look, if they get embarrassed at home in the playoff game, that puts a dark cloud over 2025, and it will make people more inclined to go there next year. The guys who are on the hot seat next year are shaped by how the prior year ends, and they need a better ending than what we've seen so far. It can't be 31-2 in the wild card round if the Steelers come back to town, or if, God forbid, for the Texans, the Ravens come back to town, if somehow the Steelers win the division and the Ravens are the 5 seed. So it's just something to keep an eye on. Danielle Hunter is one of the guys that the Texans picked up this year, and Paul Allen was on the other day, and he made a great point. I hadn't thought of it in these terms. For what the Texans paid Danielle Hunter, the Vikings got Jonathan Grenard, Blake Cashman, and Andrew Van Ginkel.
Yeah, and as many sacks or more, right? More sacks, really.
Yeah. Anyway, the Texans are in trouble, and I think if I'm a Texans fan, I'm just counting the days until this is over because I know they're not going to catch fire. I mean, and maybe they'll surprise us. It'd be a hell of a story if all of a sudden the Texans figure it out and the planets line up and they're able to win at home and then go on the road and beat Buffalo and go on the road and beat Kansas City. I mean, that game on Saturday wasn't a blowout. They played the Chiefs on the road a hell of a lot better than they played the Ravens at home. It's just, like we said with the Steelers, we're getting closer and closer to playoff time. If you are looking like that in December, late December, you're going to have a hard time competing in the playoffs. We've seen teams flip the switch before, but it's usually the teams that are hot at the end of the season that carry it over to the postseason, Chris.
Yeah, that's right. That's usually what we're accustomed to seeing. And, again, that's where it's going to be fun right now because it feels like the good teams in football are hot, and it is arrow up. And we're at a point where we worry about the Kansas City Chiefs going, wait, just stay there because you guys got a little cushion here. You're going to have a little break. Don't sip too many pina coladas. Make sure you keep your edge about you. But that's what I'm excited about more maybe than ever before as far as the playoffs are concerned. We got an upper class that I think when we get to the divisional round, we're going to sit there and go, there's 8 teams, and 6 of these teams can legitimately win the Super Bowl. Like they're good Super Bowl football teams. And somebody's going to be sitting at home championship weekend going, damn, we could have been in the Super Bowl, and we're not even playing in the NFC or AFC championship.
And remember, it was early 2023 where the Steelers went to Houston and lost 30-6. So the Texans could punch a ticket in the wild card round and address some of these concerns. And then the divisional round, we'll see. We'll see what happens with the Texans. So I don't want to completely write them off. I just feel like they wrote themselves off yesterday.
Yeah.
And now it's up to them to try to turn it around.
Right.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.